You're muted, Pat.
Yeah. Am I on?
You're on.
Hey, all right. So I guess I'm number one on the agenda, which means I get to leave before everybody else. I've been asked to give a brief update of the projects that are going on here tonight. So what I've decided to do is I picked the top, I think 4 projects here that are currently underway. And I just wanted to just give you an idea what's been happening. In your packets, I put together a big giant spreadsheet, the big colored spreadsheet that lists everything that's going on and all the details. So I'll let you dive into that on your own. But I want to talk first a little bit about the Mill Road Sidewalk project because I've been getting a lot of questions on that. Our contractor, Barcott Construction, only has a few days of work left to complete the project. The sidewalk and integral curb, which is the only thing left to finish, will be all placed at once in one day. We're just waiting word for them when they're going to be able to return to the site. There was a delay in the project because there was a change made in how the sidewalk curb and tied into the top of the retaining wall. So we do expect that project to get wrapped up substantially by the end of this week. So our consultant, WH Pacific, is providing engineering and inspection for us. And as you know, we've received a grant for $300,000 from the Transportation Improvement Board, and additional funds are coming in from Yelm Community Schools resulting from a sidewalk deferral back in 2007. So this project is actually being entirely paid for with non-city funds. So that's been a great project and it's moving along quite well. Cochran Park. We're in the final design stage right now of Cochran Park. Our consultant is Skillings Incorporated. Design progress meetings are held bi-weekly. The dates and the times do vary, but their most recent meeting was held out at the park last Thursday morning, July 30th. And just as a reminder, we will be converting one of the wetland ponds, that'd be pond number 2, into an additional rapid infiltration basin. We'll be reconfiguring the pipe routing, decreasing the depth, and repurposing the fish pond into a fountain pond, removing a bunch of overgrown vegetation out there, and we'll be adding a new restroom building near the existing parking lot. Actually, that restroom building was supposed to have been installed when the park was first built some 20 years ago, but apparently it was left out of the project, probably for budget reasons, because the utilities are already there and the step tank for it is already there. So the entire park will be closed for construction, and we're anticipating construction this coming winter. We were required to do a water rights impairment and anti-degradation analysis. That analysis has been complete. Kennedy Jenks was our consultant on that. It's been reviewed by the city. It's been reviewed by ecology, and Kennedy Jenks and the city will be meeting with ecology in the next week to discuss their comments. So like I said, the final design is underway and that project is on track for winter construction. Third project I want to talk about was Mosman Avenue Phase 2. The proposed extension to Mosman Avenue over to Longmire Street, as you know, will traverse through a portion of the Tahoma Valley Golf Course. This project is nearing the end of the right-of-way negotiation phase. An offer has been presented to the golf course for acquiring the land needed for the new right-of-way alignment. Meeting with the golf course representatives was held last Thursday, July 30th, to discuss the remaining details. And just this morning, we received a counteroffer. Unfortunately, the counteroffer is considerably more than our offer was, as expected. But we're sorting out those differences right now, and we intend to complete the land acquisition deal as soon as possible, likely within the coming weeks. So the actual right-of-way certification will not occur until the first of the year because the golf course wants to use the existing maintenance shed there until their new shed is constructed. And we really don't need the property because construction isn't anticipated until next spring of 21. On the funding side of that project, Yelm has already been awarded 2 FHWA construction grants an STBG grant and a TAP grant totaling $635 roughly $1,000. This amount will cover about half of the estimated $1.2 million construction costs. But we met with the Transportation Improvement Board on the 18th of June about applying for additional construction funding, and TIB indicated their potential of an award sounds really promising. So this grant application is currently being prepared right now and is due on August 14th. And if this goes through, this project will also be covered 100% with non-city funds. So that's good news there. And fourth and finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about the big project, the WRF, the Water Reclamation Facility, Phase 2 upgrades. There's two components to this. There's the liquid stream component, which is the MBR conversion that you've heard a lot about. And there's the solid stream process, which is the biodryer, the centrifuge, and upgrading the septic, the old RV dump station into a new septic receiving station. Design for the installation of the biodryer was just approved by council here recently, and again will result in a net cost savings to the city over time. Our consultant, Parametrics, we have regular design meetings with them every other Wednesday at 1:30 p.m., but the next meeting is scheduled for a week from next Wednesday on the 19th of August, where we will be providing comments and feedback on the 30% plan set. So this project is trucking along. We do have impromptu video meetings once a week in order to make design decisions just to keep this project moving along quickly. And then the funding, as you know, design costs are being paid for with local funds out of the Sewer Capital Reserve Fund. And then we're still discussing various construction options. They're being explored, low interest loans making up the majority of the funding package. And we're working on a sewer rate model with the FCS group right now to include a scenario of a possible sewer rate surcharge rather than an actual rate increase. But that being said, this project is on a fast track because we need to get to the 90% design stage by the middle of October. So this one's moving quickly. So I expect to spend a lot of time on this over the next few weeks reviewing plans. So does anybody have any questions on, those are the four current hot projects. Anybody have questions?
Councilmember Gento.
Thank you. Patrick, a good update, appreciate it. I was just wondering if you could go into a little more detail regarding negotiations for the golf course. Who's doing that on behalf of the city, and is any of that, any of the details like the numbers public information, or is that private still?
Well, everything is public when you're at the city. Our consultant is Epic Land Solutions, and they put together the offer package here some time ago. It was for about $395,000, and they've counteroffered with some additional requests that now total just a little over $500,000. We have, I think, $498,000 in the budget. So we're not too far out of the ballpark, considering it really was just a big swag here about 2 years ago when we put that in the budget. But we're looking through their additional requests to see what's reasonable, what's not, what typically is covered under state law, which things we must reimburse for, which things we can't. So we're getting close. We're getting very close. We're down to, I would say, a few weeks, and we're going to be able to get this deal cut. So this is all pretty normal, to be quite honest. My experience is these kind of negotiations are normal. They'd like to see another us repair a cart path out there that we're going to be disturbing, and that's fine. And they just it's really little stuff that's left.
Fair enough. Thank you for the update.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Kaminsky.
Oh, I was just, well, on that vein, I'm just curious, how much land is involved in that 495 price, Pat?
I don't know. I can give you an acreage, and it isn't very big.
Yeah, it's just a little like easement across the.
Well, it's not an easement. We're actually taking the land.
Purchasing.
Yep, we're actually purchasing the land. In addition to that, we have to pay relocation costs. And what that means is that since there's a maintenance shed on the site, we're taking that. So we have to pay to replace.
Okay.
So there's some relocation costs in addition to land acquisition costs. And thirdly, we're requiring some temporary construction easements because we'll be doing some grading that extends off the edge of the right of way. So we have to pay for and document all those temporary construction easements. And
Okay, that makes sense. And just one
it's
other question, not related to that. I had a couple of constituents ask me today something about the new well that went online, and they're saying to me, "Why does our city water taste different?" Has anybody said anything to that to you, or?
It tastes slightly different because the chlorination content is slightly higher. It's well
Higher?
within the state limits.
Mhm.
The primary reason is because some people at one end of the city it depends on where the source is of the chlorination. The farther the water travels to that person, the less residual there is left in the water.
Mhm.
Now we're supplying that chlorine at the opposite end of the city, down at the far southwest corner of the town. So what happens is people that didn't usually experience that chlorine residual are now tasting more than they did
Tasting it.
previously, and vice versa. Some of those that were experiencing it more are now less. But be assured that it's well within the state requirements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And then Pat, I had a question about the talking about rates going forward. At what point do you think council will see, kind of some of our options as far as the surcharge? I know I kind of like that idea. I think Councilmember DePino or somebody, I think he brought that up. At what point do you feel like we will, you didn't, instead of a increase of rates is what I mean. I know we talked about it, but at what point do you think we'll have those discussions coming forward?
I'm going to let Cody Colt answer that one because he's working directly with the FCS group. We're putting together a professional services agreement with them right now to conduct that study. So it's really, like you said, it's still an increase, but it's just a different way of looking at it. It just seems to be more palatable to assess a surcharge for a short period of time. When I say short, I say over the life of the loan. Rather than just across the board increased rates. So Cody, I don't know, I see your name there. I don't know if you're online, but if you could maybe add to that.
I'll be presenting that in just a second.
Oh, okay. Great. Anything else? Okay, well, call me anytime if any of you have any questions on projects because things change fast.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Blair has his hand up.
Councilmember Blair, go ahead.
Just have a quick question. You said a rate study. What does a rate study cost us, and is that really how necessary is that? I mean, I'm just trying to, depending on how much it is, it's like, do we really need to pay out a bunch of money for someone to tell us what we need to charge without kind of like, is it not possible to figure that out without that?
Yeah, I think Cody's going to address that for you here next.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, thank you, Pat. That was great. Next up is Cody Colt on the WRF.
Can you guys see my screen okay? Okay, awesome. So if your questions, you still have the questions at the end of the presentation, then you can ask them. I'll try to cover what some of the questions you're asking in this. So this is going to kind of just touch on, I have mentioned a timeline back in May where we would need to be in August for kind of our numbers. So I'm going to go over some of the stuff we've created so far, the Public Works Committee, what they've worked on, and where we should be at in terms of looking ahead. So current actions by staff and city council, Public Works Committee ideas, and council next steps. Current actions, this should look familiar. It's just now updated. I showed you guys this in May. We are performing preventative maintenance to increase cost savings of the sewer. So right now we've already yielded about 10% in budget savings just by doing preventative maintenance. And not that preventative maintenance wasn't being taking place at the sewer department, but now it's just more deliberate and we're ensuring we're getting ahead of things before they become issues. So we've been saving quite a bit of money in maintenance costs. City Council, as you guys know, last week adopted the biodryer engineering contract and kind of combined phase 3 simultaneously with phase 2, which once the biodryer is operational and the septic is operational, will save approximately $550,000 a year. That's money that we can use directly to pay for the WRF. Public Works Committee has been brainstorming ideas to offset impact to utility customers. So I'll go over some of the ideas the Public Works Committee has come up with. And then we've been working closely with ecology and the engineer parametrics to prevent delays and any extra costs that could come from having to have separate meetings with ecology and separate meetings with parametrics. We have those all at once. Ecology's in those meetings with parametrics so that we don't have to double down on meetings at a later point. The Public Works Committee, they're funding ideas. These are the things they come up with. We had a meeting last month or the month before last, where we came up with these ideas and I've kind of delved into them. One was a sewer surcharge with an expiration date. So instead of doing a traditional rate increase of X percentage, that would just be a lasting rate increase on the sewer department, having a surcharge that would be limited to pay directly for this project and would expire as soon as the project was funded was in Public Works Committee's interest. So we've kind of been pursuing that. Hookup fee adjusted for latecomers. So another idea the Public Works Committee had was incurring a hookup fee for people that build in the next 10, 15 years as they're hooking up to the system to kind of pay back what people have already paid into it. So they didn't think it was fair that someone who builds a apartment complex or development 10 years in the future gets to hook up to this brand new WRF and didn't have to pay anything into that. So maybe increasing their hookup fees to adjust for the money they would have paid if they would have been here from day one. The other question, which I believe Mayor Pro Tem Stillwell was asking, was the offset the sewer increase by lowering water rates. So I've been doing that math, and this kind of goes back to Councilmember Blair's question. We could have had a rate study done on the water rates to see how much I could have lowered water rates, or how much the council could have lowered water rates with my proposal. And I decided that it wasn't worth the cost and I can just do the math myself. So I've been doing the math on how much water rate fluctuation we have, and I'll be talking with Public Works Committee this month, so next week, about what that number could look like, and that should help offset the sewer increase so that people might actually see an overall decrease in their bill come time when we need to do a vote for the surcharge or the vote for whatever council decides to do. Yes, Councilmember Wood.
You mentioned a charge set up until this is paid for, then it would no longer be there. I'm curious if that charge, I mean, I was under the impression we had a fee that we were already charging for, a hookup fee. I know we do on the water side. Do we not have the similar setup on the sewer side for new construction?
We do. We have a similar setup for that. What this would be a surcharge just for the WRF. So it might be a line item that says WRF phase 2 upgrades, and it would be a line item on someone's bill, and it would say, this is just number I'm gonna throw out, $7. And then that number would be there, and it was, it'd have 48. We'd put a number on there, 48 payments left. And as every month they would pay that $7, and after 48 payments, it would go away because now the WRF is paid for completely. All the construction is paid for.
So what you're referring to is actually an extremely minimal charge.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to make the charge as minimal as possible. I don't know what that number is yet.
I'm not trying to pin you down. I'm just
Yeah.
From what it sounds like, though, I believe the impression you're leaving us with is that it is something that's reasonable and with an expiration, a sunset, if you will.
Yes, and with growth, ideally what we would have is growth would pay for this expansion. So as new customers come in, this bill would get paid off quicker, because now you have people that we weren't calculated into the original payment plan. They're now paying that $7 a month, and that payment will come off quicker and it'll drop off. As soon as it's paid for, it'll drop off. So if it gets paid off 5 years early, it'll drop off for everybody at that time. Understood.
So there wouldn't be a matter of here's your 48 payments left, even though we've paid off the facility at this point, we're going to go ahead and continue charging it. You're just saying that's not the case.
Yeah, and that's the idea of setting up a surcharge versus a rate increase. A rate increase, we would have to go back to council and go, well, council, do you want to lower rates now? Do you think it's appropriate, or we'd have to justify that? Whereas a surcharge, when we vote on that surcharge, we go, it expires once this money's paid off, and then we pay it off in 10 years, then the surcharge is gone. So that's a nice thing. It's got a sunset and expiration date.
Fantastic. Thank you, man.
Yeah. And that was Public Works Committee had a lot of, they were the ones advocating for the surcharge. So a lot of shout out goes out to Public Works Committee, Councilmember DePino, Councilmember Curry, and Councilmember Carmody, because this was their idea.
Nice
Um,
work,
And then,
Oh.
Go ahead. Yes, Councilmember Kaminsky, sorry.
Woody, is it possible to do something like the surcharge plus the adjusted latecomers fee, like a couple of these at once?
Yeah, that is the idea. Is if we implement
Okay.
all 4 of these, we will
Okay.
have a
Okay.
very minimal, at least from my math, we'll have a minimal impact. There will be an impact. Like we can't pay for it with $0, but there will. We're minimizing the impact as much as possible. And I will talk
Okay.
with Public Works Committee. Yeah, with Public Works Committee next week, and we're going to have a very in-depth meeting about the numbers and go over and show them some ideas of what it could look like. So.
Okay, thank you.
The idea is to minimize the impact. And the last one is the current solids disposal payment, which are paying for septic disposal and biosolids, our sludge to Shelton, would just turn into a WRF payment. So right now that's $550,000. Say the WRF would cost us $600,000 a year. Now we only have to raise $50,000 a year. That's the idea behind transferring that numbers. And those are not accurate numbers. We don't know the WRF cost yet. We know it's somewhere in the $25 million range. But as engineering goes farther along, we'll have a better idea of the cost, and I'll update you with that cost as soon as we get there. So this brings us to where we are now. Step 1 was made when we had that first presentation. If you guys remember back then, the same chart was in front of you. Step 2 over the last 2 months have been council, Public Works Committee brainstorming ideas, any ideas you have. And then step 3 is now discussing if these ideas are something we should continue to move forward with, if this is something we should scrap and we should go for a traditional rate increase. So that's where we're at now in this August step, where council kind of in the study session should discuss these ideas, figure out if there's something else they want to do, if this is encompassing what council wants to do. And if it is, then we can, as a Public Works Committee, we can kind of move forward with this and present a rate model in the next 2 months, or a surcharge model in the next 2 months that council can feel good about and we can move forward with. So I will let you guys open it up to maybe a discussion about those ideas, and I can go back to that slide if you would like. And if there's no discussion, that's okay too. If you guys like it and you just want a thumbs up and hey, let's keep going with it. And then we can just answer some questions if need be.
Cody, I really like the idea of the surcharge, just so that people know it's going to end. Because it seems like in government, we never get lower. Once we set something, it seems like it goes on forever. So I love that model. Whoever came up with that, I think that's really forward thinking, so that everybody knows there's X number of payments on it, and it's probably going to be shorter. It's easy to communicate. That's great.
Yeah, and that was a combination of all of, I know I've heard Councilmember Blair say it. The Public Works Committee was very big advocates of it. So it was a council idea, and it was just really inspiring and I think it's a great idea, as you mentioned too.
Cody?
Yep, Councilmember Kaminsky.
I know a lot of people will be happy about that lower water rate portion. And I had a couple people actually approach me today, and this is just a little bit off topic, but they were asking me, has the city stopped watering our little public areas and we're letting everything dry up and everything just doesn't seem as green as it used to be? Is that true, or does it just seem that way?
So we do water the parks. You'll notice all the parks are green and beautiful. We do not water like the medians, if that's what you're referring to. Yeah, we let
the boulevards, that
Yeah.
type of thing.
We do let the medians. There is a drip watering that happens on the trees, so the trees will get watered year round because of that drip watering. So we are still watering the things that are essential, but we do let the medians and stuff dry up and not water them during the summer, and they come back.
And have we always done that, or?
Yeah, for the medians, yes, have been like that for a while.
No, but for the boulevards, like, just driving down the main part of town, this person was telling me how everything just looks dry and not green like it used to be green.
Yeah, we water anything that's on our right of way. It has a drip water that, like the trees and whatnot on the boulevard, they have water on them.
Right.
So
okay, this person was talking about like the boulevards in front of Safeway, those type of areas.
Oh,
those there.
Yeah, we don't water those. So if you're talking about right as from the sidewalk to the road, that stretch of grass.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we do not water those, but we keep them cut for, prevent fire hazards and whatnot. So, and we never traditionally watered those.
So there's no sprinklers there.
There's no sprinklers that we use there, no, for those kind of things.
Somebody thought there was, so that's why I'm asking. I
No.
didn't think there was though. Okay, thank
No
you.
worries. No worries. Okay. And I'll go to the questions period because it looks like you guys are okay with that. Is there any questions now? If I answered your right question, Councilmember Blair, if you want me to clarify at all? Okay. And to kind of add on to that, the surcharge part, they are doing a rate study for, and it's, we had already planned that in the WRF construction to do that rate study. I just took out the water portion, so it's half as much as we thought it would be, because I can't do the surcharge math myself, just because there's so many factors going into it. And as much as a math whiz as I am, I can't do that. So I'm going to let a professional go through and pump it out, and it'll give us a nice chart that I can show the Public Works Committee where we can mess with the numbers and it'll fill itself out. But the water part is I can do. Awesome. Any other questions about the funding and kind of where we're at? Awesome. All right, then I'll pass it back over.
All right, we just learned from Councilmember Carmody that she's not going to make it tonight. So her presentation, I guess we'll move it to the next study session. So next would be boards and commissions. Councilmember DePinto, sorry.
Councilmember Carmody asked me to go ahead and move forward with it and just talk about it. But we can wait to next meeting if you wish.
Oh, no, that's totally fine. I didn't realize you guys were working on it together. So,
yep.
Oh, okay.
Shall I jump into it?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay. So basically this is something that, and it's not just Councilmember Cardy and myself. There's been a few council members that have talked about this over the last few years. And basically it would create an ordinance in the city of Yelm that would set term limits for elected officials. And this would be included for the city council, all 7 positions, and the mayor as well. So just a little background. Currently, city council members are elected to 4-year terms, and the mayor is also elected to a 4-year term. Those four-year terms are staggered out, so there's 8 elections, including the mayor. So they're staggered, so they're not all at one time. So there's there's 4 races 1 year, and then 2 years later, there's another 4 years. Those elections right now, or those races, are currently for life, not life. They're how do I say it? They don't have any term limits on them. So someone could potentially be on council for decades. There's a few pros and cons to term limits. Just going over a couple of them each for the pros. And then feel free to chime in too if you think there's other pros or you think there's other cons. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then I'll go into the actual ordinance itself. A couple of the pros that I would think it would bring up new perspectives, fresh perspectives on the council and the mayor's office. It would encourage more people to vote. With Yelm continuing to have the lowest voter turnout in Thurston County, it would provide more opportunities for change and allows for new people to run for office. It would also allow for new council members to have more influence, as the most senior members on council would only have at most 1 more term than them. Some cons on term limits include, well, we already have term limits. It's called elections. And so every 4 years you can be voted out. One issue with that is there's a lot of people that once you're elected, it's very difficult to beat an incumbent, just because of name recognition, financials. There's just a lot of, it just works out where incumbents win about 90% of the time. Good leaders are another con on term limits. That would be good leaders, good effective council members, or good effective mayor would be forced out after 2 terms. And then lastly, networking benefit would be lost. There's a lot of folks that have been in politics for years and years, decades and decades, and through that they build up a network that they have a lot of access to different levels of office, and it's very beneficial to have for a city or municipality. Going off on the actual ordinance, it says, whereas the elected officials of City of Yelm currently are mayor and members of the city council, and whereas the City of Yelm currently does not have term limits for the elected officials of the city, and whereas the revised code of Washington 35A.11.020 provides that the legislative body of each code city shall have the power to organize and regulate its internal affairs with the provisions of this title and its charter. And whereas the positive aspects of term limits for elected city officials include the following: limits potential abuses of power by elected officials to stay in office too long, encourages new people to get involved in local government, broadens the base of potential candidates, increases responsiveness to the public, encourages fresh ideas, provides voters with more choices, increases voter turnout, ensures a better balance of power among different interest groups, encourages more diversity of members of the city council, encourages broader representation of different neighborhoods, and whereas it is the best interest of the city that term limits be established for all elected offices in the city, and it is proposed in the internet of this ordinance to achieve the positive impacts of term limits and mentioned above. Now, therefore, the city of Yelm does hereby ordain section 1, and it goes into, I'm not going to read all the different sections, but basically it talks about term limits, elected officials, partial terms in office, applications, amendments, severity, the actual term limits, elected officials, the application of it, and just goes into the actual sections itself, which is all provided in the council packet and provided for the public if they would like to look at it as well. That being said, I'm a fan of it personally. I'm a proponent. I've been pretty public about this. I don't actually have a term limit officially, but I have discussed it publicly that I am going to term limit myself out after 2 terms on city council. So I'll let you lead the discussion here.
So really quick, Councilmember DePendo, I always try to ask this when something comes to us kind of, up, how did this come about? So I can kind of understand where it came from, how we got here. Can you kind of briefly, I think you may have touched on it, but can you just kind of briefly talk about that?
So, I mean, term limits isn't something that's new to Yelm or anything. That's been talked about for Congress, National Congress, here state reps, state senators. It's been talked about. Some places do it. Some, I think there's municipalities across the country even that have it. Yelm doesn't. And the one thing that we've seen and noticed in Yelm politics is that the longevity of some of the elected officials on council and as mayor in the past. There's only a couple here that have served over or will be serving over 10 years, but some would argue that's a lot. Some would say it's not that much at all. So it's just to have the conversation. One of the biggest points that I think it does is it forces new people to get involved. It forces new people to share their perspectives and ideas. So when ideas are the same people over and over talking about the same things, ideas get stagnant and people get complacent. And that's just my 2 cents. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Wood.
Sorry about that. A couple of questions. I was curious, you mentioned that you'd spoken with previous council members that had expressed interest in term limits. I'm curious if you could let us know who those previous council members were, because and it brings me to the point, I'm wondering if this is personal, because you're mentioning, council members, and, as everybody here, I think, is aware, I've been here for 3 terms, and you mentioned something about bringing in, it forces new people into the mix. And I guess you maybe weren't paying attention or weren't around when we had to literally hold an open period for other people to apply to run for the spot, because we had 2 open seats that nobody ran for. I'd also like to remind you that I am in my 3rd term. I had 1 election. Nobody else stepped up to run against me. So I have to assume they must be pleased with the job I'm doing. So I'm not sure. Like I said, it seems a little odd that this would be a request brought up, but that's my 2 cents worth.
Shall I respond? All right. So yeah, basically a couple things on that one. First of all, is the people that spoke about it. Councilmember Carney spoke about it before. Myself has spoken about it before. Councilmember Stillwell's talked about it before. Those are the ones off the top of my head that I can remember at public meetings on the record. As far as being a personal thing, no, it's not a personal thing. If it was personal, council member, I could easily run against you and we could have that debate then. But that's not the issue. The issue that you got people that you weren't having anyone running against you. I mean, we should all be so lucky, right? I've ran every single time contested, and once I had a primary. It's it's just how the people the candidates decide to file. I mean, when you were ran unopposed, I don't think everyone is unopposed, but maybe. I remember one year you ran and it was very tightly contested. I think it was your first election. It was a tightly contested race. I think it was against Littlefield, if I remember correctly, where you beat her. But subsequently, I mean, it's kind of proves my point that no one wants to run against you the next term because you're the incumbent. It's a lot easier to win.
I think that's your opinion, council member. I don't believe it's because nobody wants to run against me. I like to believe that it's because I'm doing a pretty good job representing the people. And I think that's probably my number one problem with this whole idea is you seem to want to limit what the voters are allowed to do. I mean, you think that because somebody's been here for a period of time that you've decided is more than enough time that they should be there, that you should eliminate that option for the folks for the voters. That's what
your
I
perspective.
It just seems
Sure.
like it's not about a perspective. It's the reality of the situation.
That's your perspective, and my perspective is different.
You are eliminating an option for people to vote for somebody because you feel that new ideas need to be come in, which indicates that you don't agree with the existing ideas from where I'm standing. But that's your opinion.
Correct, and that's your opinion. We're all entitled to one. Oh, yours is fact, mine's not. Yours are facts, mine are just opinions then.
Okay,
Fair enough.
Councilmember Blair, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. That's a separate issue, but I wanted to just state, for me, term limits, it's always been something I supported, and it was long before I was on this council, and it's definitely not something that I would be in support of personally towards anyone. I think there should be term limits on Congress. I think there should be term limits on the Senate. I think there should be term limits on every elected position, period. And it has nothing to do with, I just think I don't like someone. It's always been something that I want to see. And it literally has never had anything to do with attempting to get someone out. It's all about it's trying to make sure there's that rotation. With this ordinance specifically, there's the one change I would like to see is, and I'm not sure how to change the wording, but instead of someone being limited to only 2 terms, they would be limited to 2 consecutive terms. So, for instance, because I believe the way it's written right now is you could serve two terms on council and then 2 terms as mayor, or vice versa. But the change I would like to see is it would also be possible for you to serve 2 terms on council, be out 1 term, and then come back. Because then, to address Councilmember Wood's concern there, if people wanted that person back in, there would be that option after 1 term.
But if people wanted that person
like I said,
why would they have to leave?
It's the same reason why we don't have a president after 2 terms. And
that's a whole different animal, and that's a different discussion and a different debate that I'd be happy to have with you anytime. But we're talking about this here. Why would we want to if the citizen, based off of what you just said, if the citizens elected somebody, but we've decided that they can only run 2 terms and then they take a turn off, but the citizens re-elect them, that just proves my point even more, that you're eliminating the people's ability to decide for themselves who they want. That's why we have an election process. That's why we live under this constitutional republic that operates the way that it does. We're not talking about a dictatorship. We're talking about the people having an opportunity to elect who they want to represent them. What you folks are talking about here is tying people's hands behind their back on limiting who they're allowed to vote for. And I think that's wrong.
With all due respect, Councilmember Wood, I didn't interrupt you at all when you were speaking. I would appreciate the same respect. My rebuttal to that is, when it comes to term limits, it's a wide subject, and it's not, to me, it shouldn't be narrowed in on being applied to specific offices. If we're going to do it, I think we should do it for everything. And the thing with the president, the argument that you're making could be applied with that same office. But the point is, it was done for a reason, to prevent long-term someone being in the same position for a long term. And it has, like I said, for me, has nothing to do with me saying, I think they've been in there too long, or this specific person and I want them to get out. It has nothing to do with that. I just, term limits in general have always been something that I've been behind long before I even moved to this town, long before I ran on council. So I just want to make it very clear, there's nothing personal about my support behind term limits. I just wanted to make sure that I put it out there that I wanted to see that change to where it would be 2 consecutive terms, not just 2 terms total.
Also, just so everybody knows, Councilmember Curry's tablet died, so she is listening on audio. But Councilmember Wood, you had something.
Well, I just wanted to mention the reason the President of the United States has term limits has nothing to do with what you've just described. There's actually, I did some research on this, and it's pretty interesting why they exist and the arguments and debates that took place during that period. But that wasn't the reason why.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
In all the times I've talked about elections to the people in Yelm, the only complaint I've ever heard is like, well, hey, I'm a voter. I live in Yelm. Why can't I run for council? And so it's that rule that you have to live in the city limits that people have always struggled with. So this is obviously something different. And I find this kind of funny because we always talk about government restrictions and like, let us be free and more open. And so now we have open rules, and now we're wanting to overlay a closed system on something that's already open. So that seems kind of like a contradiction in terms to me. And as far as new ideas, constituents are welcome anytime. Anybody is willing to run. And I think it's kind of a self-regulating system. If I want to run 10 times and nobody votes for me, I'm just not going to be here. So it's kind of a moot point for me, the whole discussion. Just want to throw that in as a neutral. I'm just neutral. I really don't see the purpose in it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember DePinto.
Thank you. Yeah, this isn't anything to be personal about or anything. I've said about the term limits for myself long before, my second term even. It's been that way from the beginning for me. That's just me personally. And for Councilmember Blair, that's him personally. We're not we're not trying to take over the council or trying to unelect people or anything like that. First of all, I don't think this would apply to anyone. I'm not sure how the way it was written, but the intention, and certainly, Councilmember Blair, if you want to go ahead and entertain a motion or when this comes up, to amend it or to whatever, to fix it, to say that no, you can only run 2 consecutive, or you can only run 2 consecutive, and then you have to sit out 1, and then you could run again. I'm fine with that, very open with that. I'm not trying to say that this is, the fix all for everything, but this is just for me, and I get it from Councilmember Wood where his perspective is, and I'd probably be in the same shoes as him if looking at it from his perspective and his angle, So, but for me personally, I do see value in this. I do see value in getting new voices on the council, and someone's going to take my spot, regardless, in just a few years here, 3 years. So, there will be at least one open spot. But I just don't see why people are taking this personally. It shouldn't be a personal issue. And if it is, we live in a democracy here. We could vote this down or we can vote it up. So everyone has one vote on here.
Councilmember Blair.
And then also, what Councilmember Wood pointed out is one of the downfalls of term limits, is you eliminate that option, and that's always been something that's brought up about this, and it warrants discussion for sure. But to come back, to reiterate that, for me, it's not. I have no intentions of supporting it to push someone out. I would want this to not be effective until if it were to pass, I would want it effective starting that time, not retroactive. You know what I mean?
Councilmember Wood.
I just wanted to point out, there's a lot of research done. Studies have been done, and all the studies point to the idea of term limits actually doing the exact opposite of what Councilman DePinto is suggesting. The research is out there, guys. I would recommend going and taking a look.
Councilmember DeVinto.
Councilmember Wood, would you be willing to share any of that evidence? I mean, I come to a different conclusion. I see a lot of different sources out there. You know, you're saying why all the different reasons a president's it's different than president, but you don't mention that though. You know, it's just bashing us that we're wrong. You're not saying here's the other options. You're just saying no, that's wrong.
I took the time to educate myself on this. I hope my fellow council members would do the same thing before proposing an ordinance that clearly you haven't done the research on or studied on what exactly the results of what you're recommending would do. So
sure. I mean, I don't know if you're just doing a quick Google search and that's what the first thing you're seeing, but I don't know what research means for you.
I'd be happy to provide you some information.
Because I've done my own research as well, and I'd be happy to cite some sources too.
Anybody else? Pretty good discussion. Seeing no other hands, we will move to the boards and commissions.
Hi, Council. Good evening. I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce our new executive assistant and customer service manager, Kathy Lindemeyer. She is a wonderful breath of fresh air for us. She comes from us with broad municipal experience, and she's a great addition to the team. One of the things that when I came on here back in 2017 that we had been struggling with was our boards and commissions. And at the time, one of the largest challenges was that we did not have enough staff to support those. As we've advanced and we bought this new city hall, we created this unified customer support team with all of our admin assistants. A lot of those have been vacant. As you know, we've now filled those vacancies. And so with Kathy being here, what, 2 weeks now? 3 weeks now. We wanted to introduce her to all of you, and B, talk about what the steps are that she's been tasked with to really bring clarity and consistency and continuity to all of our boards and commissions. Not only making sure that they're staffed appropriately, but making sure that they follow the same consistent processes, agendas, minute-taking procedures, etc. We have several that have been inactive to get those activated. And really just take that 30,000-foot look and make sure from the council perspective, all these boards and commissions that are in the protocol manual and in the Yelm Municipal Code, make sure that from your perspective that we have the right ones. And then Kathy will work to make sure that they're all consistent and all implemented accordingly. And so she's here tonight to introduce herself to all of you and then walk through that process and what that looks like. So I'm going to step out of her cubicle so she can actually talk to you without a face mask on and take it from there. But this is Kathy, and just please join me in giving her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Michael. I am Kathy Lindemeyer. As Michael said, this is my start of my 4th week here, and I'm looking at the wrong screen because my camera's over, but so I come from Eatonville. I worked for Eatonville for 18 years, started in the utility billing department, worked my way up to the deputy clerk position where I did accounts payable, payroll, and then promoted to the town clerk position, which is kind of unique in a smaller city. I know Yelm everyone here considers Yelm small, but when you come from a smaller city, Yelm's kind of big. So in a small city, when you're a clerk in a small city, you get your hands on a lot of things. You get the council meetings, you get the boards and commissions, you get the finance side, the utilities. I mean, you're still touching on all of that stuff on a regular basis. So a lot of years of experience, and I'd just like to say that I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to being here for years to come. So with that, I will share my screen. Okay, thank you. So as Michael said, that I've been tasked with doing an assessment on the boards and commissions. And so the first step Well, first of all, we have the Mayor City Protocol Manual that was adopted by council in 2002 and then revised in 2005. The revision was done by resolution 453. And then now on the far right side, we're working on amending the Yelm advisory boards and commissions. Kind of a little bit of a repeat of just that, but the background and current situation. So the mayor and city council adopted the protocol manual in 2002, updated in 2005, and it specifies the following in conjunction with the Yelm Municipal Code. It summarizes the responsibilities and membership for each advisory board, and it describes the appointment of certain city staff positions and advisory boards and commissions. But last year, the city of Yelm established the integrated approach to customer service, which included coordinating the boards and commissions, and as Michael said, combining the customer service administrative assistant positions. And so this is an ongoing effort and high priority task for me to get going as the executive administrative assistant and the customer service manager. So a little bit more background, the city of Yelm currently has 11 boards and commissions, and of those, 7 of them do have vacancies. 7 of them are active and 4 of them are inactive as far as I can tell right now. This is based on current information, and it's still a work in progress. I'm still continuing to gather data, going through records, to make sure that everything that we have here is active before we move forward. So here is a list of the 11 boards and commissions that we currently have. And the number behind each one is the number of vacancies at this point that we've identified for each of those commissions. So with this process, the challenges that we've been facing is there's been a lack of documentation, inconsistent management of records, and also files saved in multiple locations. So it's been a bit of a task gathering all of this information so that we can get it all together in one place. No standard procedures or policies. And then we had the global pandemic. We had COVID hit with all the social distancing requirements that made it difficult for boards to meet and difficult to appoint positions, volunteers to those boards. And then, in addition to that, we have people that are on the boards that have struggling with the digital and virtual meetings. So staff has been limited and sometimes non-existent due to staff shortages and lack of consistent approach to managing them. And as Michael said, those positions are now full, so we're looking forward to moving ahead with this. So our goal with the process is to create a unified, integrated, coordinated approach for supporting all of the advisory boards and commissions by November of 2020. So our opportunities and next steps is the following slide will show the outlines and specific actions and time frame to create the consistency and continuity for all the boards and commissions, which will integrate the important role that they have for providing community feedback and participation in establishing and updating policies in partnership with the City Council. So the first action item is what I've been working on for the last couple of weeks is the research and update Appendix 13 of the Mayor and City Council Protocol Manual. So just verifying the membership lists and vacancies, the qualification matrices, and I have an example coming up that I'll show you. And then verifying references to the Eatonville Municipal Code and council resolutions. And as you can see, our time frame on that is August. The customer service team is helping, along with additional staff has been great, answering questions, helping find information. And then we do want to ask council to assess the need for each advisory board and commission and proposing amendments, if any, to the municipal code. We have several, like I said, of those boards that are inactive at this time that, maybe need to be updated. And then we want to establish the rules of procedure for the advisory committees and boards so that we can standardize this process, as far as location, meeting management, qualifications, recruitment of members, attendance. And we do have some samples that we've started looking at for those also. Also for October, we want to establish the unified templates for the minutes and agendas so that each board and advisory committee is using the same template. The minutes will all be the same. And then we'll set up the filing system within our electronic files so that all of those are saved according to the retention schedules so that we have those for history. And then establish training requirements and process for the advisory boards and volunteers. And I think that's a really important point is that, when we do have volunteers come on board, a lot of times they don't have any experience in this type of thing. So having a plan in place as kind of an onboarding process for them to bring them up to speed, I think will help them be better volunteers. Additional staff training, and then recruitment for the boards and getting those vacancies filled. So that is a summary of what we've been working on and where we're at. And if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer those.
Councilmember DePinto.
Thank you. I just want to say, Kathy, that was a really good presentation. Laid out the timeline, laid out facts. It was good. Thank you. For everyone else, she kind of alluded to what she did for City of Eaton or the town of Eatonville, but as a city clerk / treasurer in those small towns, it's often equivalent to like a city administrator or a city manager for a bigger city. But in a small town, they perform a lot of roles, and I'm just happy we got someone of her caliber here in Yelm. So welcome to Yelm.
Thank you. Like I said, I'm excited to be here.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
Yep, I was just going to say welcome to the team, Kathy. Nice to have you.
If we don't have any additional questions, I think you'll be hearing from us more in the future when we'll move forward with with the review of the committees, and then also we'll be working on the procedures and protocols. We'll be working on those and bringing those forward to council at a later date for review and approval.
All right, thank you. Now on to council initiatives.
I got nothing, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I'll be at the SWAC. I got that SWAC meeting tomorrow. I'm going to try to make it. Just depends how the timing works out.
Councilmember Blair, I thought you were supposed to be going on vacation, not worrying about meetings.
I am, but I mean, it's on Zoom, so I mean, I'm just sitting out in the, I don't even know what my grandma calls this. Is it the courtyard thing? But yeah, I mean, I may as well have joined in.
Anybody else? Anybody? Anything? All right.
I have no initiative.
Oh,
EJ,
wait,
yeah, no
wait.
initiative.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
Is Cody still on?
Yes.
Cody?
There's a 50% chance I'm still here.
If there's any way you could get me some prices on those benches, I'd like to submit that for the next budget go round. If you could help me with that, I really appreciate it. I know it's not a huge priority, but
Yeah, I'll make sure I sit on it.
Very funny.
Yeah, I will check it. I'll get back to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other hands up, we will see you guys next Tuesday. Thank you.